Welcome to our final part of a 6-part series that enables and empowers parents to make an effective change to RE and RSE in schools. So far we've covered the changes to sex relationship education in schools. We've talked about what the guidance says about the role of parents in shaping how these subjects should be taught and how schools should involve parents. We talked about how we should approach schools and the types of questions you should ask a head teacher. And in this last presentation, we spoke about how to create effective change in schools and the key factors which enable that effective change to take place. Now, in this final presentation, we want to look in some detail at the steps you should take today to create an effective change in your child's school. So, number one, we talked about understanding. We talk about that knowledge is power. That in order to make an effective change in school, we need to understand what the guidance sets out for schools to engage with parents, what schools are required to teach from September 2020. We talked about how parents need to be informed about how schools need to involve you as parents in the planning and delivery of these subjects as set out in the guidance, as well as taking into account the age and religious background of pupils. Secondly, we need to find out about how the school is currently teaching sexual relationship education. This give us an insight into what the current situation is and help us to start those discussions about what the plans are for the future. Number three, we need to plan our first positive interaction with the head teacher. We need to offer our services to the head teacher to say, look, I want to be a part of that consultation process. I want to help shape the planning and delivery of these subjects as set out in the guidance. Remember to be polite, to ask questions, and to be as constructive as possible and not critical or argumentative. Number four, we need to ask questions about the planning for RSE and RE. We need to ask questions about which outside agencies are being used to advise the school, and we said that we need to make sure that there are no outside agencies involved in that process. The timetable for planning for these subjects, and how parents are going to be meaningfully consulted. And I think we also need to ask the school what that process is and what the timetable for that process is so that we can get involved in that process from the earliest stages. You can also address these questions in a letter to the governing board or write a separate letter to them or to the head teacher as well. The 2019 edition of the Governance Handbook, which sets out the rules and the things that governing boards need to look out for and understand with regards to their role. It sets out the requirement for governing bodies to meaningfully consult parents. So governing bodies, especially governing bodies in local authority maintained schools, which is all schools except academies and free schools, which are the vast majority of schools are maintained schools. They have a statutory duty to show how the views of parents have influenced the decision making. So not only is that required in RE and RSE, but in all areas of school life. Finally, I think what we need to do is also work with other parents so that the parental voice is heard, and work with a broad selection of parents and ensure that work takes place in a consistent way with a clear objective and with that widest buy-in as possible. In the coming weeks, we'll be setting up parental groups in different parts of the country. After you take these first steps in approaching the school, and depending upon the answer you receive, we'll then support you however you need in taking those actions on from that first interaction. So we'll be setting up parental groups based in different areas of the country to support parents so that we can respond in a positive way to those schools who are responding in a positive way. But with those schools who may not have responded in a positive way to parents' requests, then we'll also look at a different approach for those schools. So in order to join those parental groups, please send an email with your name, local area and phone number to yusuf@sreislamic.org, and you'll see those details on the bottom of the screen.